Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Knowledge for Men is now doing live men's retreats in San Diego, California. Imagine 3 days of intense personal development training with 10 other like-minded men all pursuing greatness in life, business, and their relationships. You are not alone on this journey. Come to San Diego and experience The Awakening, a real cutthroat program designed to give you the tools you need to go from where you are now to where you want to be. There are only 10 spots and it's filling up quickly, so go to kfmretreat.com to learn more and apply for the program. Again, that's kfmretreat.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Martin Grunburg, the author of the #1 international bestseller, The Habit Factor. Martin, happy to have you here on the show.
Hey, Andrew, it is terrific to be here. How you doing, bud?
Doing great. I'm glad to have this interview here with you today. I know we met a couple weeks back for a drink here on the boardwalk, and your story, your book is incredible. I knew I had to get you on the show.
Sweet. And did you crack it?
Yeah. I've gone through the book, definitely.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Hey.
So we start off every show, Martin, with a favorite success quote of the guest. And when we were chatting, I mean, you were all about success quotes. You're basically just giving me one after the other, just kind of machine gunning quotes. So I know this is going to be tough for you, but what do you got for us? And then share with us, what that means to you, how it's helped you.
That's funny. So yeah, I felt almost bad. I was peppering you with so many quotes. So the first one, I think I'll hit you with, just because this has been bouncing around in my head quite a bit. And I think both you and I know some extremely smart people who are stuck, perhaps. And so this is the quote: "It's action is the real measure of intelligence." Do you happen to know who said that?
No, I don't. I like it, though.
So that's your buddy Napoleon Hill from Think and Grow Rich fame.
Sounds like a classic.
It is. And to me, like I said, this idea that if we know something and we don't do something, it doesn't add a lot of value to the knowledge. And sometimes, again, I know from my experience, a lot of people know a lot of stuff, and maybe that becomes an inhibitor. So anyhow, I love the quote: "Action is the real measure of intelligence."
It's kind of saying it's not knowledge is power, it's applied knowledge is real power.
You bet. And it's taking action. It's this idea that until you take action, you have no information. So it's, in many ways, unless it's lethal action where it costs you your life, it's more valuable than knowledge. Because really, the best knowledge comes from experience. And how are you going to get experience unless you take action? So anyhow, love the quote.
All right, Martin, this is good. Let's learn more about you. I gave such a short intro, didn't do it justice. Let's kind of go into the buildup of how the Habit Factor came into existence. What was the aha moment? What started it? So share with us your story and how you got started with this whole project.
Nothing too extraordinary. Come out of Calabasas High School, and are you familiar with the area?
North LA is what I'm feeling. Yeah. Okay.
Are we still recording?
Yeah. Okay. This whole thing's recorded. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
So the aha moment was really this day where, and I can recall it pretty clearly. I was upstairs and I'm doing some push-ups, generally working out, and I'm listening to some motivational tapes, Andrew, and it was crazy because I have it on shuffle. So it's going through from Tony Robbins to Ed Foreman to Wayne Dyer to Dr. Stephen Covey, as it's rotating from one of these, greats, motivational greats to the next. Each is saying in their own way that it's really about habit. Except what's fascinating is almost none of them are saying habit except for Stephen Covey. So Tony Robbins is talking about conditioning. You got to condition, and Covey's talking about habit. And then Ed Foreman says these are the habits or the rituals you have to do every morning. And it was pretty much the next day I ran across this Confucius quote. And I know I just shared a prior quote from Napoleon Hill, but this one is so stunning. It is on the cover of the book. And it is, all men's natures are alike. It's their habits that carry them far apart. And I think, as I told you the other day, if you were to just kind of meditate on that statement, it becomes so profound. The reality is, I'm not even sure anybody has to write a book. In other words, I don't think we need 200 or 300 pages. If you focus on all men's natures are alike, it's their habits that carry them far apart. Now, I will interject. After I gave this presentation, a woman came up to me and she said, well, excuse me, I don't believe that quote. And really the first thing I told her, she could take it up with Confucius, right? And then I had to know, what do you mean? What's the problem? And she said, Andrew, she said, well, some men are good and some men are evil. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. Because I understand her concern, but that's not what the quote says. The quote says all men's natures are alike, right? Their nature, we're born, we die, right? We eat, sleep, procreate. So it's not about our disposition being good or bad. And I think once you understand that, then what's really separating us, Andrew, is our habits.
Okay.
How does that sit with you?
This is good. You got this quote right in the beginning of the book. It's Benjamin Franklin. You just put it in the front where it says, your net worth to the world is usually determined by what remains after your bad habits are subtracted from your good ones.
Isn't that powerful?
That's powerful. I mean, it's really just diving into that. What really makes a man success is how many more good habits he has versus the bad habits that he has. And so there's both habits can go work for you in the good, could also work for you in a bad way.
Well, and he's saying your net value to the world, basically at the end of your life, is what you get once you subtract your bad ones from your good ones. So it's really that powerful. And you hit the nail on the head, Andrew, because the biggest hurdle people have, and we all have, including myself, is our language frames our reasoning. So if the first thing that happens, and I have a little video about this, I show this next week, I go to a conference where I'm giving a presentation on the habit factor to educators. And we're going to talk about the same thing. But what I'm getting at is if our language frames our reasoning and our understanding, and the first thing we think of when we hear the word habit is negative, then wow, we're in a bind. Because habit is, and this is one of the premises of the habit factor, is the greatest tool we have for goal achievement. And I'll repeat that. Habit is the greatest tool we have for goal achievement. One of the things that drives me a little nuts is there's so much confusion, not just about habit, but people in the blogosphere associate, they almost consider them the same, habits and goals. And then you'll even see blogs, Andrew, where they'll say, they will literally say, forget about your goals, just focus on habits. And the reality is, habit serves goal achievement. You don't forget about one or the other. Habit is this vehicle to achieve goals. Big, important distinction.
Yeah. When I'm talking to someone and I ask them like, hey, what kind of big wins have you had so far in 2015? And someone's like, hey, I just literally, I've put on 15 pounds. Like I'm gaining weight, I'm getting muscle. And I'm like, that's a great achievement. That's awesome. But what I'm interested in knowing is, what were the habits that you created for yourself that really led to that result? And then he would say things like, oh, well, every day I woke up, I would hit the gym. I would do this weight. I would measure how many reps I was doing. I would document the whole gym workout. And it's interesting to see that it's these habits that really create that result. It's not so much just like I wrote it down and made it happen. It was, hey, there was a series of things that I was doing consistently over time, and then the result just came.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So, and I think everybody out there, certainly your audience, they're trying to achieve their goals. Well, I know I always struggled with goal achievement, almost always. And it wasn't until I recognized, let me interject real quick. So are you familiar with SMART goals?
Yeah. SMART goals, kind of like the classic way to set goals.
Right. It's this set of criteria. Do you know what SMART stands for?
Yeah. It's a specific, measurable. I think I forget the A. I know R is realistic and T is kind of like a time-based goal. What's the A?
Yeah. So it's specific, measurable, attainable, achievable,
okay,
relevant, and time-bound. But you actually touched on part of the challenge with SMART goals. Is if you were to like Wikipedia, you would see, I think, probably 6 words for each letter, meaning it's just kind of there's all sorts of possible words. But let's stick with that: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. What I'm getting at is a couple things. First of all, that came out in 1981, and it is, if you were to Google it, you'll see it's the predominant methodology for goal achievement. It is literally littering the internet, and it's great. It's all important criteria, but what is it missing?
It's missing habits.
That's right. So what happens is, and I was following SMART goals with very limited success, is you go through that criteria, and the reason I'm taking the time to share this is if this happened to me, chances are it's happening to other people. I go through that SMART, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, and then I get a to-do list. I basically have a task list. So great. If my goal is to run a marathon, my to-do list is call the trainer, sign up, buy shoes, buy shorts. Does that make sense? I end up with a to-do list.
Right.
Whereas the habit factor methodology would say your goal is to run a marathon, and what you ought to consider doing, what you should do, is focus on the core recurring behavior. In other words, identify if you're starting out running, so that's the core related behavior, that's the habit you want to develop. Identify the target days, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, for instance, right? And then you want to identify what we call the minimum success criteria. If you're just starting out, maybe it's just a mile on each of those days. So a mile on Tuesday, a mile on Thursday, and a mile on Saturday. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm getting away from SMART goals to the extent that I'm focusing on core related behaviors. I still want to know the date. I want to know when it's going to happen. I want to know if it's achievable, if it's time bound, etc. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing is I'm tracking and recording and then reassessing these core related behaviors or habits.
Okay. And when I do this, how does this benefit me on my goal?
Well, it becomes remarkable. So what happens is over time, and the reason I say it's remarkable, it's almost remarkable that this wasn't recognized sooner. So if you were to go into Wikipedia and see the relationship between goals and habits, it's virtually non-existent. And the way this helps you is by building the habit strength over time, by building the behavior. What ends up happening is you achieve the goal more quickly. If I'm going to run 3 times a week and I do it for 4 weeks, and each time I run, it's 2 miles. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to be able to look back and I'm going to have consistency, and I'm going to be tracking it, and I'm going to see how I'm doing against my plan. So I'm building the conditioning around the behavior. It's much faster. What you would find if you were to look it up now, and I haven't done this in a while, but if you were to check out Wikipedia, it says something about the relationship between goals and habits is if you achieve a goal, you will have developed the habits. And so what the habit factor says, Andrew, is flip that equation around. If you develop the habits, you will achieve the goal. So I think the other way is a little bass-ackwards.
Got it. In your book, you talk about the interplay of nature and habits. What does that mean?
That's a great question. So what it means here, and it gets a little esoteric, but I think it's really interesting on a couple levels. The first is, if you think about what is it going to take, Andrew, to achieve your goal? I know that's very broad, but I'll give you the answer. It's going to take energy. And what are you? What do you consist of? You consist of energy, and I consist of energy. So if it's going to take energy to achieve our goal, and we are energy, well, it just turns out that the most efficient use of energy in the form of behavior happens to be habit. And when I talk about rhythms and patterns, what you see if you just look out in nature and even the universe, you see these incredible patterns and rhythms. So if you've ever seen, and I illustrate this in the book, but if you've ever seen a weather spiral, you know it looks almost like the universal spiral you might see of a galaxy. Or if you look at a shell, you'll see a shell has a very similar spiral. And what this all means is energy has this predisposition for pattern and rhythm. And so it's no coincidence that the people who achieve their goals are the ones who get into pattern and rhythm and develop habits that support their goals. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yep.
Sweet.
And
well, go ahead.
what is the distinction between the brain and the mind? What is the difference there, if you can elaborate?
You bet. And I want to back up, and just in case, because I'm sure we may not touch on this. So the etymology of habit is rather fascinating. And if you looked at the Latin root, which I'm not sure anybody's done recently, but you might want to do, it is habitus. And what it means, again, the Latin root is condition and or character. And if you think about that, like really dwell on it, what you realize is my condition at this present moment and my character, and same for you, is it's the sum total of all my thought habits and all my behavior habits to this moment. And that's how I'm known. That's my character and that's my condition. And so I think it's important, and I'm glad we're talking about how habit relates to goal achievement. But the amazing thing is it also is a predictor, if you will, of one's character. And then, of course, there's the great quote, watch your thoughts for they become words, and watch your words for they become actions, and watch your actions for they become habits. And what I'm getting at is ultimately it says, watch your habits before it becomes your character, which is what I just talked about.
Right.
And then watch your character because it becomes your destiny.
Wow.
So we're talking about goal achievement on one hand and the relationship habit has. And then on the other, it's what constitutes our character and our being. So it was worthy of a subject matter to write a book about, particularly when half the population, at least in the Western Hemisphere or more, are walking around thinking of habit in negative terms or with a negative connotation. So I got halfway there when I was telling you about these kids in this video. I play a word association game with them. I don't know if you've seen this. I may have shared it, but I say green and they say grass, and I say blue and they say water or sky. And then I say habit. And you know what they do?
What's that?
They don't do anything. They look at me like, what? In this video, a few of them say rabbit, which is a bit bizarre. And then I say what? So, and then, and then it just gets crazy because I have to, since I can't get a word, I say quickly, good or bad. Quickly, good or bad. And then they will say bad. And so it's only like 3 or 4 kids in this particular video, but it was just kind of on a whim to chronicle and document. If this is what our kids think about habit as bad, then they're not aligning it to their goals. They're not using it for their goals. And they don't understand the implications to their character and their future. So obviously fairly significant.
Yeah, very significant. Well, let's throw an example on the table here. How do you start a habit and make it stick? So let's use myself. So I want to wake up at 5:30 a.m. consistently, something that I've kind of had on my mind. I wake up probably around 8 or so. And so how should I do this?
There's a couple of quick thoughts. So the first thing is good habits happen when planned and bad habits happen on their own. And so the first clue is in that answer, in that to develop the habit of waking up at 5 a.m. And by waking up, I'm sure you mean rolling out of the rack, getting out of bed. So the first part of that is planning it, setting the intention. So we use, over at the Habit Factor world, we use something called PAR, which stands for plan, act, record, and then reassess. So the first is setting the intention. And the big mistake would be, and maybe you're doing this, I don't know, but if you're trying to do this every day and you've never done it before or you've done it irregularly, then the first part of planning is identifying, realistically setting the bar pretty low. Instead of 7 days a week, which might kill you and set you up for failure, what if you said, I'm going to do it 2 days a week? And then you say, so this is part of the planning. I'm talking you through that. If I'm going too slow, you can speed me up. But the idea is you say, what days am I going to wake up, be out of bed by 5? And then you say, well, Mondays aren't good. I could probably do it on Tuesday. I don't want to do it back-to-back Wednesday. So I'm going to do it Tuesday and Thursday. That's it. And then you plan to do that for 4 weeks. Wake up, get out of bed Tuesday and Thursday. And by the way, by setting the bar for 2 times a week, setting it very low like this, what it does is it allows you the ability to have a makeup or catch-up day. So let's say Tuesday comes around, you're stoked, you check it off at the end of the day. I did it. And then Thursday comes around and you miss. Well, guess what? You still got Friday, Saturday, or Sunday to catch up. After 4 weeks, you look back. So we talked about the P, the plan, then the A is the act, and the R is record. So for 4 weeks, you've recorded it. And I highly recommend you add notes. even if it's just a sentence like felt great or that was easy, because what that does is reinforces kind of the awareness around the intention of developing the habit. And then after 4 weeks, 28 days, you reassess and you say, well, shit, you're thinking, well, that was pretty easy. So 7 for 8, you're well over 85%. You crank it up and you say for the next 28 days, and by the way, this is exactly how you ought to do it if this is really a habit you want to develop. And you set it now for 3 days for the next 4 weeks. And then you reassess. But one of the common kind of misunderstandings is that people think it just takes 21 days and magically they have a habit.
Right. Yeah. It takes 21 days to make a habit. I'm hearing now 67 days to make a habit from London Business School.
Well, that's good that you hear 67. That's pretty close to, I have a study, where is it? But it's the European Journal of Social Psychology. And yeah, they settled on 67 days.
Yeah, and I think so. What I'm getting from what I want to do is wake up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. Just wake up earlier. And so if I set the goal and make it so easy that I just can't not do it, like you said, 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday, and then slowly progress over time until I can hit my goal, until it becomes kind of naturally a part of my routine.
Yeah, the term you probably want to consider or focus on is habit strength, which means you don't develop it overnight, and you may not even develop it after, 66 days. I still track my running habit, which is pretty well locked in, but I'm years into it at this point.
Got it. We start habits, whether it's like, okay, I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to do paleo. I'm going to start eating less out. I'm going to start cooking all of my meals. We start these habits, but we try and do all of it at once. And it becomes this huge uphill battle that can't be maintained because the habits and the routines just aren't in place. So it becomes a failure rather quickly.
So on one hand, it's like credit to you for setting the intention. And on the other hand, it's just a shame that, and you're not alone. And then it's a shame that people don't have a framework or a knowledge around how to intentionally develop positive habits. And really, that's the idea behind the book, the app. And so there's something else to know about habit development. It's kind of this triangle or trifecta. Dr. Covey talks about there are 3 things required, and your get out of bed by 5 a.m. is probably a good example. So he says it's knowledge, skill, and desire. And I love that. Not enough people are actually acknowledging or recognizing this, but I think this is really important because the book, for instance, can provide the knowledge. The book or the app can help with the skill, the process, the tracking. But guess who's bringing the desire?
Yeah, it's got to come from you.
Right. And so what happens is people think they have the desire, but not necessarily. So, it's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So the process works every time. What is beyond the process is the desire component.
Got it. And so what can someone do to build on that?
Well, I think it's a great question. They have to check themselves. They have to understand really if this is what they want. Are they being truthful with themselves? I mean, if you're laying in bed at 8:30 saying you want to develop the habit of waking up at 5 a.m., that's something that personally you have to work through.
Right.
I mean, really, it's just being truthful and understanding the motivation, if you will. Now, the flip side is, and I think this is important to say, Well, there's two things. So one is motivation is what you gets you started, and that's Jim Rohn, and habit is what keeps you going. But the flip side of that is you can develop, and that's what this saying actually postulates here, is that you can develop almost a habit of motivation by doing the tracking, going through the process. You create momentum.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
Right. Okay, so with this, share with us one major goal that you created for yourself, and then what were the habits that you created behind that to achieve that specific goal?
So, and that's probably would have been a good place for me to start.
Yeah, probably.
That's great. Really, one of the great catalysts for all of this, I think I shared, was the Catalina Classic.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So it's a paddleboarding event. You lay on your chest, you use your arms. So it's not stand-up paddleboarding, but you paddle from Catalina Island to Manhattan Beach. And in all, depending on the board and how fast you paddle, it could be anywhere from 6.5 hours or 6 hours to 9 hours. So it's, instead of 24 miles, it's actually 32 miles. But I found myself at age 35, I had this IT company, and strangely enough, it was a bit of an existential crisis. I was feeling not sorry for myself, but it was like, really, is this all there is? I'm 35. I need to do something. I need to get unstuck. I need to accomplish something. It was just the weirdest feeling. It was like I realized I was 35 and I started looking around. So I asked one of the most powerful questions, probably the most powerful question I had ever asked, and again, can be largely attributed to starting the habit factor. It was, if I were to die tomorrow, what would I most regret not having experienced? So it was a really kind of a heavy question, but it was like, what do I need to do to kind of spice up my life, so to speak? And to the top of the list, Andrew, crept this Catalina Classic. I hadn't even thought about it since I was probably 18, and here I am 35. So I worked myself up into a total frenzy. I was like, you're doing it now or never. So next thing I knew, I was downstairs. I sign up, and I'm printing out the receipt, and then it was like, holy smorgasbord. Now I got to buy a paddleboard. I got to figure out how to paddle, which is not exactly like surfboard paddling. They're quite different. One of these days I'll show you the paddleboards. But the gist is that was the goal I set. And then out of panic, I was like, how am I going to do this? And what I realized, fast forward 6 months later, and again, I didn't own a paddleboard. I hadn't paddled 1 mile or 3 miles or 7. Fast forward, I complete this 32-mile paddle, and I'm shaking my head, and I'm thinking, how in the world did I do that? And when I look back, what I was doing was I had this spreadsheet, which I still hang off the Habit Factor website for people who don't have smartphones. And I was just tracking core recurring behaviors. So you asked what those were. Those are things I developed. So one was paddling. And the true story, I mean, I couldn't even paddle 20 feet without falling off this board when I first got it. But once I got the hang of it, at first it was like, could I paddle 20 minutes 3 times a week? And then I just built up that habit over time. The other one was running just for conditioning. And then it was like visualization, meditation, stretching, and drinking water, I think rounds out like the top 5 habits. And I was tracking all of them. And that was enough, intersecting, I should say, at certain intervals. I had milestones to do events. So I tried to do a 6-mile event like 2 months in, which almost killed me. But the gist is, what got me through it was the simple art of tracking and using this form.
Got it. So having something to plug in and hold yourself accountable to the sheet so that you can ensure that you are continuously hitting and staying on track with your habits.
Yeah, but the key was the sheet was very different. It was unique. It still is. It has a target column and a actual column. So if you could draw two columns side by side, and the days run horizontal. So it'd be like Monday, and the target would be 0, and the actual would be 0. And then Tuesday, the target would be 1, and the actual, that's where I would track 1. And above it would be the name of the habit. So it'd be like paddling 2 miles or 20 minutes, something like that.
Got it. It's good to see kind of all of these things in place to hit that goal. And now let's dive into the knowledge round. I'm just going to ask you some rapid fire questions here. So, Martin, are you ready for the knowledge round?
Yes, sir.
Someday I'll go after my dreams. Someday I'll take action. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we were all inspired? If the world wasn't full of uninspiring people? We're all taught that life is tough. Life is hard. But the awful truth is that life is easy. It's pretty easy to live and do just enough. But truly living, chasing your dreams is hard. What are you dying to do? What is it that lights a fire in your heart? Don't wait till someday to answer this question. There is nothing more important than figuring that out. We're all dying, but if you're not chasing your dream, then you're already dead. Guys, go to kfmretreat.com to apply for my retreat that will change everything. Go to kfmretreat.com to apply and be part of a program that will be a catalyst for redefining your life. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. The first question that I have for you is, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling kind of lost or unsure of their purpose?
I love it. So Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. So the good news is, if they're feeling like they don't know what their purpose is, they've started the examination process. So they should not be disappointed, but they should be encouraged. And they should keep asking questions. I think sometimes the best way to find your purpose is to forget about yourself. And often you can do that by just being of service to other people, volunteering, things like that. You know, taking your attention off yourself and putting it elsewhere magically returns gifts you might not otherwise foresee.
Yeah, I like it. And let's see, Martin, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Interesting question. Courage has been described as either the mother or the father, depending on the philosopher, of all the virtues, because without it, none exist. So it took courage, I think, to ask that question, but then to take action, because that was a pretty scary result. You know, I had things like run with the bulls, visit the pyramids, and then paddle Catalina when I didn't own a board. So somehow, to answer the question, all these things interlink, Andrew. And so I would say that is, and I know you asked this to other people, so I'm curious if anybody's ever answered courage, but I think that is a virtue, by the way, which is crafted via habit.
Okay, so that was what was holding you back, was not having that.
I would go with yes. Why not?
Okay.
Why not? Yes.
Okay.
Courage.
All right, courage. Okay, so this will be challenging one. I know you read a ton of books. We were talking about that earlier. What would you say are 2 of your most influential books on your life, and why?
The first one is funny. When an initial business venture tanked, I took a surf trip to the middle of Mexico, and tripping through the airport bookstore, I found a book called How would Confucius ask for a raise? And that was a really good book. I'm not sure if it's still in print, but that led me to the I Ching, which led me to the Tao Te Ching. And so I would kind of bundle those all up as one book. I think As a Man Thinketh is another terrific book. The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale is terrific as well. So I could keep going, but I'll stop there.
Okay. Good books there, classic books as well. And here's a scenario for you, Martin. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
So the first thing is, and I think I mentioned this to you. So I have, via Big Brothers, Little Brothers, I have a little brother who, when we were matched, he was 10 and a half. Today, he's 26. So I've kind of had the benefit of reviewing this. And anyways, we were golfing a couple of weeks ago. And so the first one is this: play the financial game in two directions. In other words, they're not mutually exclusive. So turn saving into a game and continue to try to save automatically more and more money. And then you can afford to be risky and entrepreneurial and try all these kind of other things with your finances. But there's no reason you have to take just one road.
And what would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him not go after whatever he thinks he can achieve. I would just encourage him. What he shouldn't do is, I guess we just talked about courage, but to be afraid or not, to overthink and not take action.
Yeah.
So, but the good news is I think I did that quite a bit.
Yeah. You've done well. And
take action. Don't not take action. How's that for English?
I know that's simple, but it's like how many of us are actually taking action towards the things that we want consistently. And so, I mean, it's simple advice, but it's effective advice that will get a result.
And it's great that you say that. So almost always the answers are simple. I have found from my experience, and experience is far more valuable than advice. So anybody can give advice, and it's usually free. So that's usually what it's worth. Experience, though, has tremendous value.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's break down, maybe if this summarizes some of the main points of the interview, but what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. So I'm glad I didn't open with that, because I was sitting on that. I didn't know that was coming, though.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, so do you know who that is?
No, I haven't heard that one.
And you've never heard it? Wow. So I'm going to repeat it. If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours, which is just fascinating. So that's Henry David Thoreau.
Okay.
And I just broke this down on our podcast the other day. So it's crazy that you're asking, but to me, it has so many just flavorful parts, right? So the first is you advance confidently and you're not overthinking it, right? There's no second guessing, because you can never have enough information anyways. So you advance confidently in the direction of your dreams, which means you're supposed to dream and you're supposed to set goals, and you are the producer and the director. So you're advancing confidently in the direction of your dreams, trying to live the life you have imagined. And then the guy says, he has the balls to say, right? if you do this, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. This is why it grabbed me, Andrew. He doesn't say you might or it's possible. He says you will meet with a success. And then the last part is in common hours. So if you think about that, it's like, and I think that's what happens. I'm sure this has happened to you. You know, I'm at the beach with my kids teaching them to surf. In many ways, that's an incredible moment of quote unquote success in common hours, right? And it's because you're endeavoring to live the life you have imagined. So I don't know, really powerful stuff. I love the quote, and I'm super glad I didn't open with it now.
Is it saying that if you're going after what you want, you're going after your dreams, you're taking action, because it says unexpected, you'll have success unexpected in common hours. Well, it's meaning that on that journey, you will have arrived, but you may not know it. Is that
Yes. I think so. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not the guy, and I didn't even learn this in a particular school of thought. But yeah, isn't that beautiful that you're, for instance, here you are, you have a tremendously successful podcast, and here's a common hour, and it's just like you awaken to realize this is your success in action, like in living color, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm here on the beach, just looking out the window, and I'm podcasting, talking to you right now. And I mean, yeah, I didn't really think about that. So yeah, I think that sheds some light. I think that says a lot of light. Sometimes we don't realize what we have when we're on the journey.
Yeah, you almost need that as a poster over the window that's looking out to the ocean.
Oh man, that's awesome. It's another business there. Okay, so that concludes the knowledge round. That was fantastic. Martin, what's exciting you today? What's really driving you to get out of bed in the morning?
That's a great question. So, a couple things. One is the podcast we've recently launched. The other is The Pressure Paradox. My next book is, I would venture to say, at least 80% there. Something like The Habit Factor that I was working on for around 4 years. So The Pressure Paradox is percolating, and I wake up every morning writing notes. So I have a notepad right by my bed, and the pressure is on to get it done. And then the third thing is this idea that I'm going to be sharing, after sharing The Habit Factor for years with businesses, the idea I'm going to get to present to educators who are going to help spread this to young adults, think high school age kids, is terrific. So that fires me up.
Got it. Yep, I'm excited. And so for all the listeners, you can check out thehabitfactor.com, and you can also go to Amazon and type in The Habit Factor. It pops right up there. So check out his book. It's an incredible book, and it's really changing the way that I create habits, and it's helping me identify the habits that I've built unknowingly that has led to some of the results that I'm creating. So it tells me focus on those habits. That is what is getting me results in my business and in my life and in my relationship. So Martin, this has been a pleasure having you be on the show. You've shed light on habits, about life and philosophy, and it's been a good show.
It's been epic to be here, Andrew. I really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Fairby, and I'll see you in the next episode.